dear viewers. We are back once again for the Speak Out show. Me with your host here today. My name is Abraham, and here with us today we have Tony Burgess. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. And we're going to do a series of mental health and well-being, and we shall be looking at our topic of how to overcome social pressure and peer influence. And mental health and well-being are one of those topics, especially in this part of the world, and actually generally the whole world, that is neglected and not so much spoken so much about. There are measures of help that are being given. There are measures of intervention that are being put in place. But I believe the conversation is much bigger than we have laid it out to be. And through the Speak Out show here and today with our speaker today, we can explore this conversation a little bit more intricately or deeply to understand more what is happening in these spaces and how we as the youth and generally everyone and all over can understand how to overcome social pressure and peer influence. So for our first question, I think it would be quite healthy to listen to our speaker, Mr. Tony. Tell us, what do you think about this issue? What do you think on this topic? What preliminary conversation can you give?
Mm. First of all, thank you for having me back, Abraham. I know it was many years ago you had me interviewed here before, and everything you've said so far is just so great that you're even running this show and that you're making it a topic, because mental health needs to be talked about. And that's the first step, really. So having this conversation is really first step. So thank you for the invite. On this topic, it's so crucial. It's so crucial that we're having this conversation, because I think in a world where things are more and more related to like social media, we're getting heavily filtered, manufactured versions of how people are and how they're living their life and what's cool and what's not. And, we're getting these sort of snapshots of how the world is, and people are making comparisons constantly. They always have, but I think social media has made it faster and more immediate, where people are getting these like images that it's like, oh, that's cool, that's cool, that's cool. Oh, I'm not so cool. And it deflates people's self-esteem, makes them anxious, makes them do things that are against their values. And, all of this pressure ends up steering them in directions that really isn't who they are. And, when people look back on their life, the things that really matter are the things that are aligned with their deepest values, with a sense of their best version of themselves, things that make them really feel proud. And it won't be those things that they're seeing on social media about, having the best clothes or the best phone or the best watch or the most money or whatever. It isn't that stuff. What people at the end of their life looking back on really feel proud about are the things that are most aligned with their contribution to their society and community and their values and their purpose and their identity at the highest level. So thank you for even just putting this on the table as a topic.
That's a very amazing response. And what you've shared actually, I find is much relatable with the work that you're actually doing with the Academy of High Achievers, in the sense that social media is actually making a lot of people live below their potential. And yet they could live so much more. Because of the pressures of social media, some people are becoming good copies of great originals. They're an excellent copy, but of an original. Yet in truth, they can actually be an original, which is also excellent and really good. So in your own experience, how do you think that we can help people actually come out of that shell of pressure, come out of that shell of stress, of those things that social media is putting in their minds and in their heads, of expectations they shouldn't have? How do you think we can help people realize their true potential in that space?
Well, it's interesting. We've done a lot of work. We've done work with young people in schools. We've done work in large businesses, small businesses, with individual entrepreneurs. We've worked a lot across a lot of areas. And one of the things that I've noticed in my work, coaching, training, therapeutic work, is that the things that ultimately are about real success is about what makes people deeply happy. You know, sometimes people chase the highest amount of money or the bling or the biggest phone or the biggest, screen or whatever, there'll be, or the coolest item of clothing or what have you. And that's not where real success, real happiness, deep, lasting success and happiness resides. There's often like the temptation to go for the fast win, or to get some quick cash, or that kind of thing. And it's more the deeper, longer term hard work that leads to things that are worthwhile, that leads to that real success that has lasting value for self, but for family, for the community at large, and leaves a legacy. Um, you know, in terms of leaving a legacy, people aren't going to be bothered what watch someone wore. In when someone's died, when people are saying who's made an impact on the world, who's made an impact on society, who's made an impact on a community, it's not going to be, who wore the coolest shirt. It's just not going to be those things. So society's got these kinds of ways of presenting, oh, this is success, this is success, this is success. And very often it's not that. When you really ask people who are millionaires, billionaires even, what matters, often they'll say it's not the money. It will be about connection with people, with family. It will be connection with friends. It will be about making a difference. It will be about purpose. And so actually what we can do is look at those people who have walked that path and realized, oh, it wasn't about that. It wasn't about the money, even though, oh, okay, it was nice to have the money. But, the happiest people on the planet are not necessarily the ones who have got the best watch, the best clothes, the best phone. It isn't that. The people who are really leaving impact, who are talked about for decades, even centuries later, because of the impact that they've had, are the ones who are making contribution, who have stayed true to their values, sometimes against the grain, who have ended up being, sometimes not initially, but have been the path that has been carved out that then others have followed, rather than, oh, I'm just a follower. You said it so well about becoming a copy of, rather than that original. We've all got a unique blend of characteristics and capabilities, a unique blend. No one else on the planet has the unique blend that you have, Abraham. No one. No one has the unique blend that I have within my makeup. And that's a great opportunity, because that's where our chance to make a unique difference, to be world champion. No one else can beat me. No one else can be you. No one else can be each of these individual listeners today. And so the way that they can be world champion is by being their unique blend of who they are, and bring what is truly their highest values, their highest sense of purpose, and be the one that is inspiring others to follow, to be who they are. Not to copy them, but to be who they are, to be a living, breathing example of be who you are at your highest version of yourself. That's real, true success. Those who do that achieve what they're meant to achieve in life, but also have deep contentment and happiness at the end of sometimes quite a challenging, path that has effort and has commitment and dedication, but it has lasting benefit, that people will be talking about for decades.
That's amazing. That's very amazing. You see, when you say that people have potential inside them, everyone has the ability and the capacity to be their best self. Those are all very deep things. But now, for us as the youth, the young people all over the world, I'll speak for many, because we have grown up in an age of information where there's so much on the internet, there's so much on social media. And in fact, one of these days I was watching a documentary called The Social Dilemma, and they were talking about how they have these people that work at these social media companies of Facebook, WhatsApp, and all. They're called attention engineers who design these apps to help them keep the user's attention on the app as much as possible. And we're looking at how all of these things are creating this pressure. They're creating this pressure. So as a parent, as a person who is as a young person growing up, and for all the people that are going to listen to this, how do you suggest, or what would you say to them? How can they overcome this pressure? How can they not be driven by social media? How can they not be driven by all these expectations that are surrounding them? How can they be, let's call it independent thoughts, to have independent thoughts, to be self-driven, to not be swept by the vicissitudes of life? So what would you say about that?
Mm. Well, really great point. And it's interesting, isn't it? Some of the people who have developed these tools are often not allowing their own family to use these tools. It's like they know the power of it and they know its potential destructive power. So there's a message in itself. But I think it is there to be used. It isn't going away. I think we can use it and harness it, but to do it on our own terms. So knowing that it's designed to grab our attention, draw us and in a way control and influence us. If instead we say, no, this is a tool that I can use, I can harness on my own terms. So, for example, one way we can do this is to turn all the beeps and notifications off that are like grabbing your attention moment by moment. That's very much like a casino, you know, on the one-armed bandits where there's lights flashing, there's sounds, there's music, and then sounds of a win or whatever, even if it's not really a win. All of that is it's like designed to hook you in. There's dopamine released in our brain, chemicals released in our brain when we get a ding and a light flash up on our phone and things like that. And so there's options within our devices to turn those notifications off. So I'm not going to get, I can have a time where I use social media as a tool. And I pick it up, not when something flashes up on my phone or a sound happens, but when I decide this is a time where I want to research something, connect with someone, find something out, or whatever. I do it on my terms. Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally makes sense. Totally makes sense. So what you're saying is that the young people should do things on their terms.
That's it. So, why not use social media to say, find examples of people who have succeeded by carving out their own path. That would be a great way of proactively using social media and the search rather than being led with just whatever springs up. And then you get the wonderful thing is when we start to search for examples of carving out your own path, social media brings more of what you're searching for. It will bring more examples like that.
Oh, amazing, amazing. That's a very amazing share right there. For my next question, which I believe is something that's on the mind of many people, knowingly or unknowingly, is there's something that we call peer influence. And for many, we underestimate how much it affects our mental health, our mental well-being. Because there are many times I have watched people, friends, family stay in relationships that are quite toxic for them, not just romantic relationships, but on a general scale of things. And they're looking at this person perhaps as a solution to a particular problem that they have. And this person is also greatly actually influencing them as a peer at that particular point and level. And it's a very stressful thing because sometimes this person that is being affected can't be convinced that the person and the friendship that they're keeping is actually not good for them. And it's also one of those things that many kids, especially in schools today, that, as a teacher, we get to experience and see quite a lot of things. And sometimes you see one friend walk with another friend, but this other friend is distracting them. And you're realizing that much of their academic struggle, much of their school struggle, much of why they feel they're not loved, why they feel they're not good looking enough is because of this friend. Or even sometimes I think you spoke about earlier, you having been a teacher for some time. I think you've seen those spaces where children speak quite ill about themselves, as how they're fat, body shaming, how they look like this and how they look like that. It's all peer influence. It's all one of those things that affects mental well-being. But as people, how does someone walk out of that box? How does someone learn to be themselves? Like now, this is different from the social media influencing them. But we want to look at how people are influencing people in the good way and the bad way, and how we can make better relationships.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's a difficult area because it takes both awareness and courage. I think, you need to find ways to help people become aware that some messages are really unhelpful and some supposed friends are not serving them. And I think bringing role models who are relevant and stories of real people who have had those breakthrough awarenesses, that I thought this person was my friend, and these are the kinds of messages they were giving me day by day. And they were helping me in this way, but this was having a bad effect on me. And I finally realized this person is toxic for me, and I broke away. I think where we've got real life stories of people who have had the awareness and broken away, that becomes a reference point. It leads people to think, hang on, who are the friends that might be in my life who are similar? I think where teachers um, share their own stories about their own self-doubts, as especially when they were younger, their own anxieties and things, and where that came from, and how they overcame that, and how they realized that we are all unique and wonderful human beings. We may look different, we may be of different sizes, we may have different features, but we're all unique and wonderful. But where did we get that awareness from? I think being open about our own vulnerabilities, our own sources of anxiety, the things we did, but how we overcame them, how we had an awareness that allowed us to realize I'm more than that. I'm more than what that friend was telling me. These are the things that can help. I think if we can bring, obviously, as a teacher, there's an age difference between us and them, and I think if we can bring some slightly older students to come back and share how they've been able to have a new awareness and break away from toxic friends, that is um, closer to the age that they're at, and it can be more relevant to them sometimes. But so important that we find the ways. It really is. Some role playing in schools and things like that on um, scenarios that regularly show up um, can be a useful way to get people thinking, is that me? Is that what's going on? Am I even being the bad influence on someone else? Am I limiting someone else as well as am I being influenced?
So, from the conversations that we've been having here, you have highlighted so much the area of awareness, how someone should get aware, and how I've noticed that from the things that you have said, that awareness is actually very important if someone is going to break free of a societal construct, because society has its construct, and it's important that someone becomes aware, and it's important that someone sees, and also someone is exposed to people that have actually walked that journey, because when they are speaking to someone they can relate with, then it's easy for them to make the connection and also make the same journey. But in a world where many people have been respect in this century, I think we can all agree that the conversation of respect and honor is very blurred as to whether we understand that this is the person who has achieved this more than I have, or this person has gone to this particular place more than I have. And even for the younger people, so many a times I'm in class and they sometimes make you look like to their age. They don't see you as the adult that you are in some instances, but it's not because they don't understand that you are an adult, but perhaps that's just how they have been raised. Because many of them have grown up on social media and television because parents are so busy working 9 to 5s and running businesses that they don't have so much time for these children. So, how would you say, as an organization, we can help in that area? How would you say that we can help in that area? How can we expose people? Besides this show that we're doing, this is one of the avenues that perhaps we are getting people an opportunity to have a relatable experience, to find help, to see a solution even in the conversation that we're having today. But how do we expose the youth? How do we expose even slightly older people and the older people to these people that are actually going to impact, change their lives?
Mm. Well, first of all, as you say, this radio show, just talking about it is key, and finding opportunities to talk about it in many different settings. So, in schools, in family units, in having imagine in a school having a group where it's like come and meet and talk about social pressure. Just having a place where it's safe to come and talk about it, share their own examples, ask questions about, where might I be experiencing social pressure or not? Where might I may be making unhelpful comparisons? What is my greatest values? What is my unique contribution that I could make? What would be my highest view of my goals for myself that has lasting impact in my community? Just even being able to have these kinds of discussions, just having a little topic heading within a group, maybe even just once a week or once a month or whatever, it's a starting point. Talking about, we've seen the same in the UK. Mental health and it is becoming more of a topic that can't be ignored. Businesses would have used to have just, we don't talk about mental health. Schools, we don't talk about mental health, but it's more and more become important. And the starting point is it's okay to talk about this. Encourage people to come together and talk about this. Ask questions, share, be vulnerable, give examples, support, really be listened to rather than judged and blamed. This kind of forum, wherever we can form, whether it be in church, whether it be in schools, whether it be in groups in the community, finding places for people to talk about things that raises that general level of awareness in individuals and in the society in large.
That's good. That's great. How do you think we can get parents involved in this conversation?
I think by recruiting some parents who get it, who are respected members of the community. If you can get like those first few involved, approach some individuals that you feel may be open to this, who see the bigger picture, but maybe haven't made time for it yet. If you can get those involved, it's like then they're a role model for others to get involved.
Here in Africa, I don't know if it's the same out there. Parents have been known to be very emotionally absent from their children. And it's not intentional really. It's how they grow up. But for the kids that are growing up on television and Hollywood movies, they're seeing parenting happen in a different way. Therefore, their expectations from their parents is a bit up here. So it creates one of those challenges that sometimes many of these kids feel their parents don't understand them, their parents are absent. Like just being present does not mean you are available emotionally for your children. It's a very important thing. And even us as people, I believe every other day the world and people are becoming more callous and seared to the entire idea of emotional intelligence, like to know how to deal with X, how to deal with Y, how to deal with Z, because many a times we say some things that can sometimes be so insensitive, and sometimes even many parents, many kids are saying that many kids are actually saying that their parents don't understand them. So the conversation again still comes around how they're so much affected by the social pressure, how they're so much affected by the peer pressure because parents are not actively involved in the conversation. And while you have given us this very amazing solution, there's still so much. How do we actually help these parents see this, that they need to actually get involved, that they're not doing the parenting thing so perfectly, that even them as human beings, they're actually making mistakes. Actually, here in Uganda, just one more thing, we have a very interesting saying where they say a parent is never wrong. The parent is never wrong. So one of those things that you hardly hear an African parent say, I don't know if it's to say, is sorry, or I made a mistake, or I don't know what to do. It's one of those conversations that's really hard to hear. Though, just to add more flesh to proverb, that proverb does not presuppose that the African parent is always right. It just presupposes that even in their wrongness, as a child or as a younger person, there is a way you deal with them and approach them. So you don't be disrespectful, you don't be all those things. So for these parents that have not yet seen this, for these parents that have not yet understood this, how do we help them? How do we reach out to them? How do we get them involved?
It's interesting because this shift has to be almost like to listen and be emotionally available, um, to show some vulnerability. We need to have that as this is a strength on connection, um, rather than showing weakness. And again, it's an education thing, I think, really. You know, having parents able to be trained in some simple things like asking great questions, just holding space and really listening. These are things that are relatively simple tools when they buy into it. And I think the buy-in bit again comes from some key role models getting it. So if some of the most influential parents in the community get it, and we can get them to buy into it, we can maybe train them in how to do really good active listening, sharing vulnerability, seeing that as strength, and asking great questions of young people that allow them to open up and also come up with their own solutions. This is going to again influence other parents. So I think starting with a small group of parents who are influential, that's really where it can work. And I think seeing the benefits for all, because if a child ends up turning to being part of a gang or crime or social peer influence in unhelpful ways, ultimately the whole family and communities suffer. And if we can learn ways to be emotionally intelligent, to really listen, to connect, to ask great questions, to be willing to be vulnerable and see that as a strength, then not just does the young person benefit, the family benefits, the community benefits, society benefits. I think if we can see that as a strength, then it will spread. It will be a gradual journey, but we need to start with maybe the most influential parents that are seen with respect already and let them model that, and others will follow. And that would be a really good example of good peer pressure, modeling something really good and healthy for the community. And then others look to that. It's like, I want to be part of that. I want to do the same. They're getting good results. There's a place for peer pressure, but it's in these more positive areas.
That's very amazing, and I'm sure it's going to help a lot of people because it's one of those conversations that we still need to have.
Mm.
However, for our next question, I wanted to ask, actually, let me make a statement and ask. We have a lot of stigma in Africa around things like mental health. We have a lot of
Sorry, I
stigma.
missed. I just missed
Oh,
that.
sorry.
You have a
We
lot
have
of.
a lot of stigma on issues like mental health, right? There's a lot of stigma around those kinds of conversations because it's not normal, or rather, it was not 100 years ago, 150 years ago. We didn't have counselors, we didn't have shrinks, we didn't have those experts. They were not around, and it was not one of those kinds of things that we were building into. We figured that if a person had a challenge, you sort of handled it yourself, muscled through it, especially for the men, and you went forward. The women, of course, did have the aunts and all the ladies in the community and society to go to. Whereas for us as the men, we were always expected to have answers and have solutions and to have to really give light to everybody else where there was no light. So it's a big stigmatized conversation. And for that part of the world in Europe, I believe it's one of those things that it's not so much of a stigma anymore. Yes, there is a degree to it, but from the research that I have done, it's not so much of a stigma. And I think there are a number of accredited shrinks, there are a number of accredited counselors, and people that are helping through all of these kinds of things. So, as Uganda as a nation, Africa as a continent, and every other part of the world that perhaps hasn't dived and jumped onto this boat, how do we get onto that boat to really make it one, very okay for someone to seek help from another person? And number two, how we can actually train people around us because there are not many qualified experts in these spaces.
Mm. Wow. I think it's a gradual game, this. I really do think it's a gradual thing. It's societal shift that needs to ultimately happen there. And we've definitely seen it just over the last 20 or 30 years here in the UK, where there's been quite a lot of emphasis on men talk about your feelings because men have not traditionally been encouraged to talk about their feelings. And with male suicide levels being of concern, it's like, look, we need people to talk about what's going on. They're taking all this responsibility of fixing things themselves, coming up with the solutions and the way forward themselves. We need to get people talking. And so what I have noticed, I haven't got all the answers here, but what I have noticed is when key famous people have stood up and said, I've had this mental health issue and it's really helped for me to talk about it. And I joined this group where men talk to men, or it could be women talking with women, uh, or I got myself a counselor and it made a really big difference. So when again, it comes a little bit like to these role models speaking, being courageous enough to speaking up. So the ideal is like some really famous people doing that. How do we get that? I don't know. But um, if we can really find pillars of the community to say, to be the courageous ones, to say, you know what? I haven't always got the answers. You know what? I have got vulnerability. I've got stress. I've got anxiety. Sometimes I've lost my way. And that's about being human. It's not about being weak. In fact, as talking about it is courageous and takes strength. And it gets me back on track. It gets my resources, my talents, my strengths flowing again. And this is how it's served me, and this is how the ripple effects has served the community. I think it's that role models, again, I mean, in a way, it's the same topic flipped over of influencers. We know how powerful peer pressure is and social influence is. Let's get really good influencers influencing in a positive way. If we can get social pressure, peer pressure, working around these great topics, it can be working for good. Nearly everything that has a downside, we can flip and has a upside. If I ask a unhelpful series of what if questions that deflates my mood, I can ask some better what if questions that expands my mood. So any tool can be used to torture ourselves or limit ourselves, or flipped over, the power of it can be used to enhance our performance, enhance our well-being, enhance our societal progression, and so on. So I think sometimes rather than eliminate, say, social pressure, it's like, how do we harness it? Instead of eliminating um, social media, which is going to be impossible anyway, how do we harness it as a tool? So anything that has power, let's ask, how do we flip that over and use it? And in this case, I think it's about how do we get influencers standing up, or pillars of community standing up and saying it's okay to talk about mental health. We just need those first few to start talking about it. And then other influencers will be like, I want to be part of that. I want to be part of that. People are listening. People are noticing this is relevant and useful and serving the community.
Oh, thank you so much for that beautiful share. It's amazing what you have actually shared, and you have actually brought up the need for us to continue to get the people of influence and people who are respected into society to actually now begin having these conversations. And I think it's one of those things that we are actually going to get actively involved on, because this kind of advice is the kind of thing that's going to make a difference, though gradual. It is a difference all the same. And in the long run, I believe that the world and Africa as a space is one of those places that really needs the impact of social health, that needs the impact of the counselors, the shrinks, all of these people that really help people be in perfect and good mental health. It's a stretch, but it's also a journey and a battle that we are willing to fight. And it's very amazing the work that you're doing through the Academy of High Achievers. And I was going through the website trying to understand the kind of work that's happening. And I'm like, oh, we definitely need something like this here in Uganda. So from us, the Ugandans, to you, when are you coming?
Ah, well, you know, my colleague, actually, Erica Neal, who has visited Uganda recently and met with Derek and Charity and other people within MNI, she's
Mm.
actually here with me, staying in my house. She arrived last night, and she's
Oh,
been quite seeing her connections in Uganda, and the wonderful work she's seen firsthand that the project is doing, and being able to make a difference by being there. It has inspired me. I can't tell you when, but it has inspired me to make that journey and actually come to the community in person. So I've made a commitment to myself that and to you that I will come. I can't put a time scale on it yet, but it is now firmly on my agenda to come to Uganda.
sure, sure, sure. Okay. We have had a very interesting conversation here, and we have been trying to understand under our topic of mental health and well-being how really to overcome the stresses of social pressure and peer influence. And while we may not be in position to exhaust much of the conversation that we have had a very significant portion of the conversation here today. And I believe for many of our listeners, this is going to be a definitive conversation to begin something, to spark something off, that they may understand how to deal with these social pressures that they may experience and learn how to deal with the peer pressure that they also experience. It's very important that as you have said, to expose people to as many good things as they can, and also to harness their innate and latent potential, but also to harness the potential of those things that have been coined as bad and dangerous. Because when we are harnessing the potential of those things, we no longer bring ourselves to the place where they're a problem, but rather they can actually become a tool for the greater good. And now, what words would you love to leave with our viewers? What statement would you love to leave with our viewers? Something, a piece of advice, a nugget, anything that you'd love to leave with us.
Well, I mean, you're very, very wise and so hard to follow. What I would say is that just a reminder that each individual who is listening has a unique offering. So following someone else's path is not the answer. It's about what's my highest mission? What would I like my legacy to be? What would I love people to remember me for in 10 years after I've passed, 100 years after I've passed? What would I love people to be saying about me? And carve out that path. It may not be the one that's cool today on social media, but it's the path that is sustainable because it's most aligned with your values, your purpose, your unique offering. And you'll be world champion at it because no one else can be you like you can be you.
That's right. That's right. Thank you very much, dear viewers, for tuning in today and listening to the conversation that we have had. We'll be back with you next time with another topic, and we'll be hoping to have Mr. Tony back again. Thank you very much.
Thank you.